If there's one company that doesn't need any introduction, it's our presenting partner, McKinsey & Company. We invited McKinsey partners Simon Kaesler and Piero Gancia to share their vision on the future of insurance, but also to take stock on the current state of the industry and what is required to make the essential next leap, to shift digital transformation to a higher gear, to gain more speed in the adoption of advanced technologies, and to close the gap between what customers want and what insurers offer. So please buckle up and welcome Simon Kaesler and Piero Gancia.
Good morning.
Yeah, Roger just mentioned it in the intro. Insurtechs are relatively new. So people started to Google insurtechs actually only at the end of 2015. And since then we have also seen very different waves. At the beginning we saw a lot of hype. So we saw that, amazing ideas were out, great teams were formed, a lot of investments were gathered. And this went on for a couple of years. But as we all saw and experienced, the last couple of years were a bit more, as we call it, reality. Maybe too much of reality, to be honest. We saw valuations declining, more pessimism. The question, is there really a future for insurtech at scale? And we would say today, yes, there is. And we remain actually quite optimistic. And we think now is actually the time to scale, and we will tell you why. First of all, let's have a look at the insurance landscape here in Europe. And when you look at it, the market is quite irresistible, as we call it. So there's a big jackpot out there, 3 trillion in premiums in non-life, growing actually very nicely, plus 19% in the last 5 years, 400 billion in profit. We see on top of that a lot of underinsurance. We'll talk about that as well. So new risks that are not insured sufficiently, big opportunity. And at the same time, we haven't really seen a lot of disruption at scale yet. So this is also an opportunity. As we saw in many other industries, it might take some time, but eventually it will happen. For example, if you take the share of insurance that is distributed directly to the customer through many of the digital players, this is about 10% globally, so it's not, I think, where other industries are. Then, if you double-click on Europe, you see actually what I said, nice developments of premiums. So top line going up, stable profits, big profits actually. And we would also say this is our base case scenario. In the next 5 to 10 years, this will continue, more or less. So top line will continue to grow, profits will remain stable. And of course, there are different scenarios. At the moment, we live in a very volatile and uncertain world. But even in these scenarios, we don't see, a big drop. We looked at 4 scenarios, actually, and recently published a report analyzing insurance in the next, in the next decade. And there could be a time where we basically continue as in the past area. So sluggish economic growth, limited non-life top-line expansion, all these things that we saw in the past. And still here we would see some growth, we would see an expanded profit pool, so quite nice. There are a few scenarios that are a bit more challenging, like the higher for longer one, where we would see more inflation. At the moment, I think a lot of concern around inflation and if it goes back to historic levels or not. In that scenario, we would still see for insurance also a lot of challenges in the claims area and other areas also in life, with a decline in profits, but still it's not a massive disruption. It's a small decline. There's a balance sheet reset scenario, which is a bit in between, and the positive scenario of productivity acceleration. And there's still a lot that can be done in insurance, closing underinsurance partially that would boost the profit pools, especially the premium pools. So overall, the market is quite good, quite stable. When you then look into digital disruption, you see that insurance is somewhere in the middle. When you create a matrix like we like to create here with the pace of disruption and vulnerability to disruption, you find insurance a bit in the middle. Other industries have shown digital disruption at scale already, retail, travel, telecom, for example, that are more on the top right. And we are, I think, with insurance, depending on the line of business, somewhere in the middle. We see actually disruption coming from incumbents. We see disruption coming from, of course, a lot of insurtechs, and I mean, many new ideas out there. So we would be optimistic that there will also be disruption at scale in the insurance industry. And where could this disruption be? I mean, in our view, actually, along the entire value chain. So when you think about the different lines of business and you think about the value chain, we see almost everywhere potential for disruption through digital, through analytics. I mean, the cases we have been supporting saw actually massive impacts. We just put a few KPIs here. There are many more. I mean, reductions of loss ratios are up to 10 percentage points, which is massive. Or also, I mean, if you take sales, with digital assets, analytics, you can increase retention quite significantly, 40% higher retention for customers with significant impact on economics. So there are many, many examples. Technology can help, but also really along the entire business value chain.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for this outlook of the insurance industry. Thank you all for being here with us today. Please fasten your seatbelt, because we are going to talk now about InsurTech, what they achieved and what are their challenges. So, first of all, let's look at this roller coaster slide. And here we can really see that we need to have a fastened seatbelt, because looking at the investments in InsurTech over the past 5 years, compared to the investments in other sectors by VC, we can see that InsurTech investments really ballooned and then dropped. So we had this hype during 2020 and 2021, a lot of big achievements, and then now we have a drop. The drop clearly shows a lot of challenges. Let's, however, start from the achievements. On the achievement side, we can see that more than 50 unicorns were made across the globe, 17 of them, about 1/3 in EMEA, across a number of locations: London, Tel Aviv, Milan, Paris, other locations as well. However, let's look at the names here. Are they still today all unicorns? Not all of them, if we look at least at those that are listed. And what is the reason? What are the challenges behind it? To answer this question, we looked at 3 very distinctive unicorns, and InsurTechs, of course. We looked at how much they grew, fantastic compared to normal incumbent insurers. We looked at the loss ratio, less fantastic, improving in some cases, but still challenged. And then we looked at overall profitability, including customer acquisition cost and costs overall. And there we can see that, yes, it's improving, but I mean, it's taking time. It's taking time. It's still deeply negative, right? So the business model is not sustainable yet. However, our view and our theme here is to say good things sometimes take time. And let me show you why through some examples. First of all, let's look at all main listed fintechs. Here you can see the net income margin, and you can see that just 1/3 of them have a positive net income margin. InsurTechs are marked in blue, and you can see that they are all in negative camp today. At the same time, looking at the half-full glass, we can also see that next-gen fintechs are turning positive, are turning profitable. And when we look at those that are most profitable, they've been around for several years, 10, 15 years. Then, looking at another example with this hint that the time is required, let's look at the dot-com bubble. And let's look particularly at the Nasdaq 100 today. When we look at the components of the Nasdaq 100 today, we can see that we have 50% of the players that were already there 23 years ago, before the burst of the bubble. Then you have 1/3 that were there, but not in the Nasdaq 100, but already operating and existing. And all these 85% of players went through the crisis, went back up, focused on the business model, and now have fantastic valuations. If we look at the most challenged of those at the times of the dot-com bubble, we can see that, and sorry for this big word, even resurrections are possible. Because this player dropped 99%, then went back up through M&A, through disposing non-core businesses, and also, by the way, by working on embedded insurance, which is one of the value levers that it has today. So, this is again showing what we were saying before. Good things, most of the times, take time. And we spoke to 100 founders of InsurTech UK companies. InsurTech UK is one of our partners in the UK. And talking to them, we asked what are the challenges and what are the opportunities that they see for their companies. And we found two pairs of very consistent answers. On the opportunity side, scaling their models on more markets and trying to gain more profitability through cost and through technical excellence. On the opportunity side, on the challenges side, definitely the challenge was capital, for sure, as well as also the challenge of getting scale, getting volumes. So the growth that we saw before, fantastic, but still not enough to get the scale that is required. This was just a snapshot we wanted to provide you on the challenges and achievements of InsurTech. Now back to you, Simon, on European InsurTechs.
Thank you, Piero. If we deep dive a bit on the European insurance landscape and look at InsurTechs here again, I mean, we see actually we have about 850 in our database. Compared to the US, this is of course a bit smaller. I mean, we have a lot in the UK actually, France and Germany is next, but it's quite sizable. And if you sum up all the valuations, I mean, we estimate this is about 40 billion already, which is, I think, quite sizable despite the drops in valuation. What is even more interesting is if you cluster these InsurTechs a little bit, which we did here. So we took essentially the cohort from all InsurTechs from 2015 to 2019 in Europe and put them into 5 categories. The first category is basically the one of segment leaders. So the ones that have really achieved scale, that are growing fast, you could say, that are disrupting. And those are about 7% of the entire cohort. We have 10% of next-gen challengers, which are close, also growing dynamically, not really at scale yet, but on the way. So 17% actually quite healthy, quite nice, quite growing. We have in the middle about 25% question marks, so the jury is a bit out what will happen there. Early stage, prospects could be good, but we haven't seen the momentum yet when you look at the KPIs. And we have about half of all InsurTechs that started between 2015 and 2019 that are somewhat stuck. So that are not growing, that are still small, that are not increasing the employee base, for example, that struggle to get investments. So actually it's quite sizable. But this doesn't mean, I mean, for them it is over. It means, as Piero said, the jury is also out here. There are many opportunities in the market and they need to prove themselves now. And we see also 9% of all InsurTechs that started in that period that discontinued, which is not unusual, actually. It's not such a high number if you compare it with other industries. So that's a bit the landscape as we see it now. And hopefully we will see in the next couple of years many more moving to the left boxes. Then, I mean, when you look at qualitatively a bit deeper what is working, what is not working, we would differentiate 3 different models. The first model is the traditional B2C model. A lot of InsurTech started there, trying to disrupt essentially the customer interface, going to the customer directly, digitally. And what we see, what worked here is actually if these ones use somewhat superior data, do superior underwriting, are doing something different. Many have not done it, actually. And also the ones that discontinued basically tried to price below market, which was not sustainable. They didn't really have a differentiated USP. You know? They went like others, a bit cheaper, maybe on price comparison websites, but not very different. That one model didn't really scale. On the B2B2C side, I think we see lots of new opportunities as also non-insurers are entering the arena. We'll spend a word on that. So there are big opportunities for large-scale partnerships. And then, of course, B2B, we have been saying this for a couple of years, that has been the hottest area recently, supporting and partnering with big insurance groups, for example, in the claims area, in the pricing area. And here we really see lots of improvements if they are really focused and bring excellence along the value chain. So that, I think, has been an area that is developing very nicely. On B2C, maybe one word. We just had our direct conference with a lot of the direct insurers in Europe, and I think the sentiment was a bit mixed. So what you see here reflects that. So on top, the lines show you the market development of insurance in North America, Asia, and Europe. So that has been growing. We said this at the beginning. But what has not been growing, at least not in Europe, is the share of insurance that is distributed directly to the customer, B2C. So that share here is about 18% in Europe. It's not bad. It's actually driven a lot by the UK, which has a very high share. But it's stagnating for 5 years now. Until 2018, this has been growing, but now it's stagnating. Same actually in the US, flat share, and in Asia it has been actually growing still. But that is a bit a question mark. I mean, how to boost that share further? I mean, we see other industries with 50% or more here. Then the other, I think, big opportunity is embedded insurance. So we see many companies, a few are also here at ITC that will speak about it, entering insurance now. And not entering insurance by just distributing insurance, but really by building their own insurance competence, by hiring teams, doing pricing, creating their own MGAs. So that goes beyond the traditional models. A lot of tech companies are active here. And they don't show it as insurance to the customer. So it's more seen as a service. If you think of Apple Care as a prominent example, I mean, customers don't really see that this is insurance. And we estimate that this space will grow also quite a bit in Europe in the next couple of years globally. And I think this is a very interesting arena also for insurtechs to partner, to collaborate, and insurance groups. Back to Piero.
Thank you, Simon. Now, we close our presentation with the road ahead for insurtechs. And to look at the road ahead for insurtechs, we want to look first at what incumbents did. Incumbents did many steps forwards, but still have some fundamental challenges. And these challenges go from distribution, the fight for customer, direct distribution, to underinsurance, as Simon mentioned before. So there are still customers that are not insured, there are new risks that are coming, as well as technology, both legacy and adopting new technology. At the same time, despite the challenges, insurtechs actually have still good momentum for the talent attraction, the lack of legacy, the speed of execution, as well as the big incentives that founders have to deliver value. Now, let me focus on some of these challenges and see how insurtechs could and are tackling them in order to create value. First of all, the customer ownership. At the beginning, we saw insurtechs mostly focused on B2C. This was 10 years ago. Now we see progressively a shift, sometimes by the same insurtechs, by the way, into different business models, involving incumbents, involving embedded insurance, involving agents and brokers, involving bancassurers, to try to access their customers and then get the scale that they lack. This is indeed a very good strategy to grow. And we already see, in many of these cases, the fruits of this focus. Looking at underinsurance, even just looking at Europe, which we consider typically decently well insured, we see a gap of underinsurance of about 300 billion euro of premiums. And this is mainly related to lines of business that are in non-motor, non-life, due to both long-term trends like the aging population, to new risks like cyber or even the effects on property of climate change. Now, by focusing on these niches that are not niches, are actually large lines of business and growing, insurtechs can really take a central stage in the future of the insurance industry. We see that, and we see how they are partnering with some of the incumbents to achieve this, which is pretty remarkable. The last point is tech. And talking about tech, we cannot but also talk about Gen AI. Last week, I was with the founder of a large insurtech who was telling me, I cannot go to a VC without mentioning Gen AI, otherwise I lose his attention immediately. Now, despite this, let's say, very extreme example, Gen AI wasn't there, now it's there. We are working on it, both with incumbents and attackers, on a number of use cases, from marketing and sales to claims excellence to customer experience. The jury is out to say whether it will be the technology that will disrupt insurance. However, what we think is that if there is one type of player which will be able to really use it and change insurance, innovate insurance, these are indeed insurtechs. Thank you very much.